Hey guys, I'm FatBuddyCat, and this is my new Coleman mini bike. I hope you guys like bolt-on performance. I hit up my friends at OMBWarehouse.com and I got a few items that should help out this RSV 200. I have a Coleman RB RT 200, what they call a stage 2 kit. It comes with a non-EPA carburetor, proper jets, billet adapter, auto light plug, and a header and Mini 91 silencer, new gasket and everything. This should fit on this frame as well. We're fixing to find out. I'm going to be making one change. This kit came with the 8-degree key for the woodruff. Instead of using that, we're going to switch to an ARC billet flywheel. This is for a GX200 clone taper. The reason I'm doing that is because these modifications, plus the other modifications that I just performed, the high compression head, 18-pound valve springs, this could push us towards the no-no zone. When you go north of 5,000 RPM, not saying we'll hit it, but if something were to come loose and it free revved, alright, first thing to go would be the magnets off the stock flywheel. Those will take out the mounts for the coil on your block and you're all done. So, where this is the most difficult thing to install, that's what we're going to start with. I'm going to try to do it on the frame. The first thing I'm going to remove is the pull starter. I already have the top two bolts out. I left the bottom one in. That's because the top two also hold my quick linkage in place. The quick linkage is connected to the throttle rod. The throttle rod has sort of a little Z end on it. I'll come down and then forward, just like that. All right, let that swing to the side, and now I'll get that last bolt. If you keep all your tools, parts, and hardware together during the process, it'll make reassembly a whole lot easier. I'm now going to go after that flywheel nut. I'm not using an impact gun. I am going to use a crankshaft holder tool. Here's the thing. You need a crankshaft to put the holder on. That keeps it from spinning when you're trying to turn the flywheel nut. Otherwise, you'll just, do something like that. So, we're going to use the flywheel nut to access the crank. Here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to put a ratchet with the appropriate socket on over here, and I'll lock it against this foot peg. I'm going to remove the torque converter cover, and then I'll be able to loosen the bolt on the end of the crankshaft or output shaft. however you want to word that. The ratchet gave me a little bit of guff. It kept pushing the foot peg up, so I ended up holding it with one hand, and then I just used a ratchet wrench with the other to back this bolt off of the crankshaft. I don't even have it out all the way. Okay, now that that's out, you can remove the driver. Probably gonna have to get the belt off there. Oh, we're gonna take the pulley off anyway at some point. Oh look, it's one of those bearing jobs instead of the bushing. So we're gonna upgrade to a Comet driver, but I'll be sure to keep all of this together so that I know I have a spare working unit. Here is the crankshaft, aka output shaft. Here's my tool. I'm going to need a key to go in the keyway. That'll lock these two together. Around a little bit, okay? Here's our keyway. That's going to line up with this keyway. This goes on. We then line this square up with one of these threaded holes, and you insert a bolt. It can just be finger tight. You don't have to send it home. I used a much longer bolt than you need, but it's gonna work. I have really good positive placement with the key and my two keyways. Got my trusty ratchet. Reach over and loosen that flywheel nut. That shouldn't be more than 54 foot-pounds. Might as well take these plastic fins off. Alright. The flywheel is held on to the taper on the other end of the crankshaft. I'm going to have to spin this around so that we can pop that off. I don't need the crankshaft holder tool to pop the flywheel. I'm not sure if it's going to help the process, so for now I'll just take it off. We will be putting it back on when we lap the billet flywheel though. Alright, I have my flat bar in position. I feel like I have a pretty good pry right there. I have my flywheel nut on the threads, protecting it from this big hammer that I'm about to give it a bop with. This is by far the worst part of this. There it is. Just had to swing it like it owed me something. That is a relief. All right. In removing the factory flywheel, I'm going to be losing those magnets as well. Those have just as much of a chance as coming off as that one on the outside radius. there's plenty for those magnets to come in contact with and reap havoc. So, since I can't use the magnets there, I'm also going to lose the lighting coils underneath. We're going to keep this factory headlight. I'm just going to end up powering it a different way. Get all this stuff off, and I'll get some fine grinding compound for lapping the billet flywheel on. I also have to remove that key. These Colemans are wired up pretty nice from the factory. There's a couple connectors back up under this boot. One of them goes to the coil here and the kill switch. The other one goes from the headlight back to the other two coils. I'm going to keep this all together and try to preserve this end. It's a nice little clip. I might be able to use that to wire in my new power source when I get there. Easiest way to remove that key. Grab a hold of it and pry it up towards the crankshaft. See it coming out. Little wiggle. Yeah, buddy. We can reuse that after we lap the ARC unit on. I just placed a very small amount of this fine grade metal grinding compound on my fingertip, and then I smeared it around the portion of the crankshaft that the flywheel is going to rest on. I might have to get the coil. No, I think we'll make it. Alright, I'll be able to spin the flywheel freely. We're going to have to open up the coil gap for the stronger magnet on the ARC flywheel. We'll take care of that. Right now, my main concern is the crankshaft. You can see it moving there. Alright, I don't want it doing that while I'm trying to lap my flywheel. This is where the crankshaft holder tool comes back into play. I'm going to reinstall this so that I can lap the flywheel and torque the nut at the end. I get my tool back on. No matter how hard I push inward while I'm lapping my flywheel onto my crank, the crank cannot move. Once you're done lapping your flywheel, one of the most important things is thoroughly cleaning both the crankshaft and the flywheel. I hit them with the super clean. Got on it with a old toothbrush. Wiped it off with a paper towel. And then went back over it with some soapy water. It's just a little dish detergent. and warm water. I used a soft paintbrush, and I was just sure to get absolutely everything. You don't want any residue in your keyway, your threads, your taper, or up against that seal. Same thing here. You got to get it off the taper and out of that keyway. No messing around. As mentioned, this particular performance package doesn't necessitate the use of a billet flywheel. This is completely on my own accord. If you were to use the offset key with the factory flywheel, that is about what it should look like. I don't have it tapped in place, I just have it set. Okay. That would hold the factory flywheel via the keyway in roughly the area that it needed to be to acquire 8 degrees advance in the ignition timing. I'm going to be doing the same 8 degrees with my ARC billet flywheel. I'm going to reinstall the factory woodruff key. I'll be sure to place the minged up end facing outward. That way the best end is underneath the flywheel. Well, that holds it where it needs to be for my 38 degrees, give or take. The taper and the torque from the flywheel nut are really what's going to hold that thing in place once it's set. So, speaking of set, 65 foot-pounds. With the crankshaft holder tool. Can be done with one hand. Now that the flywheel's on there, and it's not coming off anytime soon, I'm going to remove the coil. I know I said that I was just going to gap it, but I actually remembered that I had this nice red spark plug wire from a good friend, and I also have this brown spark plug boot that I got from a man named Hooley, who's no longer with us. He was a motorcycle mechanic that I met, and he handed this to me and told me to use it. So I don't think he'd want it to just sit around on the shelf. The hole that's in it really isn't big enough to pull my wire or my end through. So you can see I've already been working on it. I'm just going to use a tap to ream it out. I'm going oversized on the tap because it's soft rubber, so it pushes outward as you try to force this inward. If you want to get somewhere, you're going to need more than what you think you need. strip back the wire enough that I can fold it over on itself. I'm going to stick that into here, and I'm going to crimp it the best I can. They make a tool for this that I just for some reason haven't bought yet. I think I did all right. I hope I didn't take too much. This thing's going to go pretty deep inside this boot. I'm fairly sure it's going to go down there now. Really reamed out the gullet. There's only one way to find out. It has to make its way from the coil over to the spark plug. I'm going to be doing away with this air box anyway, so I'm going to get the boot on there, and I'm going to pull the air box and carburetor off. I carefully removed my throttle rod and governor spring from the butterfly on the carburetor. I'm not going to be reusing this, so I'll just place it aside somewhere. It still has gas in it. I gotta drain it out. When I did the head swap, I believe, well no, I know the engine that it came off was running a stock style carburetor, so these are the correct studs. I'm not sure. In the factory, I think they work as well. Anywho, here's the air box. I just remembered that it has a few lines on it. One is for the breather on the valve cover. The other is the gas tank. So there's going to be that hurdle. Alright, back to the spark plug. I'm going to remove the coil altogether, the wire and everything. Now that it's in the open, it's a lot easier to see the path that this has to go. I think it'll make it. Now that I have the coil and wire all as one in my hands, I'm going to grab onto it and I'm going to try to hold the coil still and spin the wire to the left. I think it's on a threaded post in there, so hopefully we can back it out. Yes, sir. That one came out pretty easy. Sometimes they can be a little bit on the difficult side. I've had to use pliers before. Not this time. Pretty sure this is a standard GX200 coil. 168F. Yada yada yada. I don't know how to read it. The 168 thing I know. So let me take a look. Yeah. Bruh. I know that is a stock coil. That shrimpy thing. Adios, dude. Got another one of these kicking around. I'm going to grab it and use that instead. Good thing I noticed. The one on the right, (168F). Everything's the right distance as far as the mount. It hangs back a little bit more. Yeah, we're going to use the bigger one. That's still a stock coil off a different engine, so I'm not doing anything strange here. I have my new wire threaded down onto the corkscrew. It's inside that little barrel part. Instead of turning it to the left, you just turn it to the right. I also grabbed the boot that was on the stock spark plug wire. I slid that onto the new wire before I sent it home in the corkscrew. Slide that down, and that'll help keep debris out of there. I just attached the ground wire that comes back from the kill switch, and I noticed this little guy hanging out as well. I think this ground was attached at the top rear bolt on the fan shroud, and I just didn't notice it when I removed it. Usually they're up here at the front, so on this particular engine they just chose a different spot. I'm going to get the two bolts that hold this in place, and then I'm going to grab something to gap that coil away from this flywheel. You want those bolts tight, but not too tight. Don't go stripping them out. I have the magnet turned away from the coil. That way it's not trying to stick to it. When I place my two business cards in between, for a stock flywheel or a PVL, you just use one business card. Now we need a spark plug for our new non-resistor boot. We went from whatever core wire this is to a definitely copper core wire. All right, here. And we now have a non-resistor boot. We got rid of the malarkey that's up in here. We're delivering the best spark that we can from this flywheel to that spark plug. I do that so that I can run a better spark plug and possibly get better results with it. I have higher compression, and we're going to be adding more fuel and air this time. There's the factory spark plug on the left and the Autolite 3910X that came with the kit on the left. It's been argued that the 3910X takes up more of the chamber. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just going to provide a better spark than that doofy looking thing. Looks like it has 4 chances at getting a good one. Because of all of that metal, I'm more comfortable running these spark plugs with the modified cable. I feel like they deal with the heat or the current a little bit better than they do with the stock wire. I don't know, just a theory. Anyways, not the best plug to tune on. The ceramic is way down inside. It's hard to see. On the factory spark plugs, it's a whole lot easier. We're going to run it anyway because I think this kit only came with 1 jet and the non-EPA adjustable carburetor. So we're just going to have to send it. This is annoying in probably the best way possible. If anything, I think the wire is too long. We switched to a 90-degree boot instead of something that went sort of straight on to the plug. The only way that I can make it work is from the side or the top, but I can't do either because I'm bottomed out on the stock muffler. This kit came with a header. We are going to be replacing that, and it should free up that space. But it would be more efficient if I finish everything on this side of the engine before turning the mini bike around and going over there. I can install everything except for the pull starter. I also have to remove this chain guard because I have to access the other end of the jack shaft. I'm thinking about my installation of the driver and pulley, so alright, let's get the carb on. I already have it set out. This is a Ruixing. I don't know how you want to pronounce that, but I do know that these are a quality, adjustable, non-EPA carburetor. This one has the bolt to drop the bowl. That's going to allow us to change out the main jet. This is the one that came with the kit. So, like I said, I think it's a 37. Either way, that's the one that's going in there. I have the billet adapter for the air filter, choke lever, and all my gaskets. I'll have to pull the insulator off and I just replaced that gasket back there against the port. I'll leave the insulator on and I'll just replace this one. And this one. I used a 10mm socket to loosen the bolt and remove the bolt. I then grabbed the appropriate size flathead screwdriver to back the main jet off. That's loose. I'm going to drop it out. Make sure that my float can't fall. and I'm going to replace that jet with the one that came in the kit. I put my choke retainer bracket on the billet adapter. This would be the front. That's the top. I have the choke on the carburetor, and I hooked up my throttle rod and governor spring the exact same way they came off. Next is this gasket, then the adapter, and 2 nylock nuts. I have the fan shroud on. I didn't forget the ground wire. The carburetor is now ready for an air filter. This one has a purple hue to it, and that's simply because I already doused her down with the K&N air filter oil. I did that as soon as I got it. This stuff takes about 24 hours to dry. Get this air filter on, and then I'm going to pull these lines off of the air box. I know I need this one. It goes back to the valve cover vent. I'm still not sure what I'm going to do about this tank vent. I have other side mount tanks or side fill tanks that don't have vents on them. I could go that route, but I would kind of like to take a shot at fixing this one. We might just cap this off and put a vented filler cap. That's definitely a possibility. I didn't even think about that. I have to plug that somehow. Alright. I had a couple of these little filters. They're super passive. They just basically let air out and they don't let particulate in. One of them looks like it already had some oily air coming from the inside out. That was probably already used on one of these valve cover vents. I just took the stock tube that came out of the valve cover vent and went into the air box. I didn't cut it or anything. I crammed a piece of 1/4 inch Tygon fuel line about a 1/2 inch inside. That other end is just going to go in the hole and catch the tang the way it's supposed to. I'll run this somewhere up on my frame, and then I'll put a zip tie on it. We'll have the filter on the end. And then I'm going to try to do the same thing from the fuel vent. I'll try to loop the fuel line back like this, bring it up next to the other one where I'll have another filter. Maybe I can zip tie them both together with one. See what happens. That should work. I know the valve cover vent will. That's just moving pressure from one point to another and keeping dirt from returning back into the system. I've seen 3x8 spun aluminum tanks on bikes with the little vent tube on top and a filter connected. That's kind of what we did here. They had it running slightly downhill from the factory. I don't think it's going to fill with gas and create a vacuum. It should leak back down inside if that were the case. Yep, we're going to run it. Next, I'll just take this cover off, spin the bike around, and we'll take a look at the exhaust. It's like 8 degrees outside, so I just let this header sit in front of the heat for about an hour. I went over it with some steel wool and then some lacquer thinner on a paper towel. You can see the contaminants that came off. That's all I'm after. Now I'm going to step out back and smack it around with a little bit of this high heat grill paint. This will keep it from rusting over time. While that's drying, I went ahead and removed the factory exhaust, and I'm going to nab the pulley. It's a 21 millimeter nut on this side, and it's basically what looks like a head of a 10 millimeter flange bolt from the other side. Somehow, oh, that might be threaded in as well. Well, we're going the opposite direction, so if I hold this one, that one should loosen. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. I didn't even think about that. The end of the shaft on the other side could have threads, and that could just be a 10 millimeter flange bolt holding the sprocket on. Now I'm starting to remember that from the 212 Pro. Now I'm really starting to remember it. That 10 millimeter flange bolt is coming loose. Alright, so this is letting go before the lock nut. Oi. If we stop the sprocket from turning on this side, oh, maybe I can turn it off of this side. I'm going to try holding the brake and sitting on it while I turn the nut. Yeah, that didn't work either. With the brakes, it just felt like it was pulling really hard. Back at the pads on the rotor. Well, I'm gonna replace the chain anyway. So I guess we'll just remove that 10 millimeter flange bolt, take the sprocket off, let the chain go with it, and I'll send the shaft back through this way with the pulley, and then take the pulley off. Something seems a little weird here. I tried to send the shaft back through, and I thought that was just a spacer. It's definitely keyed. I wonder if that's not press fit or welded to this side of the shaft, and it's meant to be pulled out from the sprocket side after the pulley's been removed. That means I'm changing the chain anyway, but it's not going to come out that way. I'm going to have to get that nut off the pulley somehow. Tricky. I gotcha. Universal adjustable oil filter wrench. I don't even know if it has a size on it. Fits over that portion of the pulley. You just lock it in place, hold it like that, and then got on the nut with the impact. 21 mil. There's a series of washers. Oh, there you go. That's a big dookie lock washer. That had a lot of tension on it. I actually kind of like that. Hopefully it doesn't put a lot of tension on the bearings as well, side to side. We don't want that sandwich action. Might have something to do with the way they made the shaft on this thing. Anyways, I'll get that off, and I'll have to see if the Comet fits on. I checked it with my caliper. It seems that both the bore for the Comet and the size of the shaft are just under 16 millimeter. The stock one slides on pretty loose. The Comet is just a skosh tighter, if that's even a word for that. It's just not as loose. What doesn't work is the key. It's kind of weird shaped. It's wide in both directions. It seems to me like it would go into the keyway this way. Alright, it doesn't go in. On this one, it does. So, what if I turn it sideways? Well, then it will. But then I don't think it fits. I'm just figuring this out myself. If I put this in not the way I thought it went. Can we go that way? Just when you thought you had it. Okay, that's in. Maybe that'll work. Facing up, keyway facing up. It's like something just doesn't want to go. See if I have some other keys, or I could file the factory key down, but then I'm really dedicated to this because I don't have another one to replace it. Let's see what I got. I half suspected this was going to be the issue. Comet gives you these nice write-ups with their products. A little information sheet. This one's actually like a packet. Parts break down and everything. Okay. We have some specs right here. Driven unit, 6 or 7 inch, 5/8 or 3/4 bore. That's the shaft that it fits on. So this is a 5/8 bore. They both use a 3/16 key. I have a 3/16 key that fits this pulley perfectly, but it's going to be loose when we put it in a keyway on the shaft. That's going to cause premature wear on either the shaft, the keyway on the shaft, or the key itself. I guess it could translate over to the sprocket and chain, because if you have a little bit of play here, and this is the center of the circle, okay, even though it's just a little bit right here, by the time you get to the outside circumference, that play is going to get something of a pendulum effect. It's going to expand, and you're going to notice something like that. All right, it'll be like major free play in the pulley on that shaft. I guess I can just put it on there and show you. It should fit, no problem. Okay, it's on there. See how much play there is? By the time you get to the outside, it's like, you know, I have a way to change this. I just don't have it right now. Instead of modifying the stock key, I'm just going to leave the stock pulley for right now. When tightening that nut on the pulley, I used my oil filter wrench and my ratchet. I turned it nice and tight, and then I backed it off a scooch. That way there's not like a constant bind between the bearings. If this, like I said, is somewhat stopped on the other side, and this is tightened, it's pulling together like a sandwich. There's torsion that's on the bearings on both ends of that housing. So if we let this have a little bit of relief, it doesn't really have any free play, but it's just not sent completely home, then it relieves a little bit of that tension, and you can probably get a little more life out of your bearings. I didn't grease them up yet. I probably should have. Well, no, I don't feel like pulling the whole shaft out. I'm going to end up seeing if I can get some better quality bearings. I'll grease them up myself and do that as like a service. I could see if I can find one of these nuts in a shallow nylock. I could put it on there and then back it off and have plenty of threads past the nylock section. Worst case scenario, you could use some sort of a castle nut and a pin you have to drill through. There's all sorts of things you can do. The factory spacer that came with the other driver worked out perfect for the Comet 2. Sweet on the alignment. There's your replacement number for the belt. Bronze bushing instead of a bearing. Comet driver. It's going to be a step up in quality. Mostly the materials that they make them with. You can feel it when you hold them. This piece is known to be stronger. I'm going to use the bolt and pilot washer that came off the other one. So I was going to put some blue Loctite on it, but if I have to service those bearings, I don't want to fight it any more than I have to. So we'll just set this thing at 20 foot-pounds. Same way I took it off. I'll have a ratchet on the flywheel nut, and then I'll get a torque wrench. Well, I didn't use a torque wrench to take it off, but I'm going to use a torque wrench to put it on. I'll put a torque wrench on that bolt, and I'll turn it to 20 foot-pounds. Something we shouldn't have any problems with is this header. Came with a clamp for the Mini 91 silencer. The paint's dry. We'll put this on first. Figure out where the end is and see if we have room for the silencer. So far we're looking good. It's aimed over above the filter there. Oh, got my spark plug wire. Let's see if I have enough room for that now. Yep. Just got to push it all the way on. Definitely not hitting the exhaust, and I'm far enough from it that it's not going to be melting anything, that's for sure. Okay, I'll turn the bike around again. I'm just going to fit up the silencer without the clamp. It should come out just above, sort of next to the air filter. It exits past the frame. It's away from everything. I could come out that far. I could go in. Well, really, you could cut it shorter and go way in if you wanted to. I like it somewhere right about there. Oh yeah. I have my recoil starter back on. Throttle linkage hooked up. Pretty much ready to start this thing. I have both of my guards off of the rear. That should make installing this new chain a little bit easier. This is a gold on black. They're a little wider. They're definitely more heavy duty than the stock job. So I haven't loosened the axle yet. I'm not sure how far I'll have to pull it back. I'm just going to try to get it on right now, find the closest link, and then I'll make my adjustment from there. I moved the axle all the way forward. I grabbed a permanent marker and I highlighted the link that I have to remove. I'll take that one, and then the master will connect those two. It'll be a little bit loose, so we'll just add tension back here at the adjusters once the chain's on. Oh, lucky chain brake. Worked very good. I've had this one a long time. Probably upwards of 20 chains cut with it. It's seen better days, but it just keeps on working. This is the factory chain. You can see the difference when they're next to each other. Those gold links are beefy. The black section isn't bad either, but I know who really shines. That looks awesome. It is a little bit wider, but I do think it'll still work with these chain guards. I'll give it a shot and see what happens. If it rubs, I could trim it back, I guess. This one doesn't have that option. Only one way to find out. Let's get it on. I got it on without trimming anything. It pivots with the swing arm, takes the chain with it. It's actually not going to rub. It sits directly over the chain, more towards the front. It's just kind of flared out in the rear. I like it better without it. I'll keep this little chain guard in the front to protect the carburetor. It came off on me before, and even though it went around the rear axle, it didn't lock up because of the torque converter. It spins freely from the output shaft on the engine, so it's not like it was a big lock up and snap come flying up at my thigh sort of situation. Yep, she's coming off. You may have noticed that I took the air filter off. That is so that I can access the adjustment screw on the side of the carburetor. That one right there. That's the idle, that black one, plastic one, and that gold colored one, probably brass or something. That is the air fuel mix. I just turned it all the way into the right and then back out 1.5 full turns. So 1 full turn and then half a turn. I know it's going to start. At least I'm pretty sure. The only thing that could really throw us off here is timing with the ARC flywheel. It's lighter than the stock flywheel. They claim 32 degrees. We would be the stock flywheel plus 8 degrees if we use the key that came with the kit, which is supposed to be roughly 32 degrees. It might be less though. Switch works. Turn it back on. Yeah, see right there, there's a little kick. I don't believe adding more fuel to the circuit is going to fix this problem. It could just be the weight of the flywheel. I have a PVL flywheel. I might... No, I'm going to swap it out. I'm definitely going to do it. So I'll take the fan shroud, starter, linkage, all of that off. I'll have to pull the torque converter cover, get to the shaft, so that I can re-torque the flywheel bolt. Yep. I'm just going to do it, and then we'll come back and try to start it again. One of the great things about the PVL and the ARC flywheels are that they have these threaded holes to receive a flywheel puller tool. You combine that with a crankshaft holder tool, and you're in business. Use a 1/2-inch wrench to turn these nuts up against this block. Once you feel like they're good and tight, you can use a long bolt or a punch, something to get like that, and then hit it with a hammer, and it usually just pops loose. Sometimes you'll just start turning the nuts, and that'll be enough to do it. I guess. Yeah, it feels like there might be a little more girth to the PVL. Maybe, I don't know. This is a dense unit right here. That's all billet. I love these ARC flywheels, but they don't always react well with the stock cams. I know this from past experience. There was only one way to find out if it was going to work, right? Just like anything else. I forget what the exact degree is on these, but I think it's like 4 degrees above stock rather than the 8. I know it's less than that one. I'm going to pull the key, lap this on real quick, clean it up, and reinstall it. Pretty sure these get set at the standard 54 foot-pounds. Remember, with a PVL flywheel, it's only one business card. Okay, here we go with the PVL. Fuel on. A little choke just in case. Pull feels good. Taking that motor right what cycle it's in. I'll try to start it. A little choke. Much to my surprise, I was able to remove these factory grips without any damage to them or the handlebar components. I even tried to glue the left one on. That wasn't holding me back from this classy upgrade. These are one of my favorite built well grips. There's a couple patterns that I like. This is definitely the fancier of the two. I have directions on the back how to put them on. WD-40, 24 hours, yada yada yada. Get you some. These things are really, really nice. Yeah, buddy. Those'll do. I also went ahead and added a black outerwears pre-filter. I was gonna go with red, but when you're doing accents, there is such a thing as too much. That nice gold chain. A little bit of orange over here. This sticker definitely brings it all together. I'm digging it. There's a few more things I'd like to do to this mini bike before I really put it through its paces. One of them is going to be hooking up this factory headlight so that it works with a battery and a switch. Have a good night, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one. I want you to stay. I want you to stay. I